Tekedra, thank you so much for being with us at Google I/O. A huge milestone for Waymo to announce today, 10 million totally autonomously driven miles. Just put the scale of that milestone into perspective for our viewers.
So it's 10 million trips? I don't know.
So many trips, sorry.
Yes. 10 million trips, which basically represents scale across Austin, Los Angeles, San Francisco, as well as Phoenix. And so we'd already announced that we were doing over 258,000 trips per week. And at the end of last year, we had hit 5 million trips. And now, only 5 months later, we're announcing 10 million trips.
It's like exponential growth, yes, pretty much. And these are paid trips,
These
right?
are all paid trips, and they represent people who are really integrating the Waymo driver into their everyday lives.
Is there something about the last million that told you something about how Waymo is going to be able to scale in the future?
I think every trip, especially at scale, is accelerating the rate at which the driver is learning, but it's also accelerating the pace at which we are engaging with communities, right? Like figuring out the actual pain points and making sure that we're meeting people where they have needs is one of our sort of biggest priorities, because we don't want this. It's exciting that it's a tourist attraction, but we don't want it to only be a tourist attraction. We really want people to integrate this into their everyday lives. 10 million after 5 million last year tells us that that's happening.
How fast do you think you get to the next 10 million?
Very fast.
Very quickly, the end of this year?
Very quickly. Not going to predict. So if there's one thing I've learned, it's not to make predictions.
Right.
Because, you know, we're going to ultimately be led by safety.
Of course. Okay, so 250,000 trips a week. At what point does Waymo start making money? How big can the business get by the end of this year? Is it profitable?
So we are super focused on building a sustainable business. And so profitability, of course, as well as costing down our entire tech stack is something that we're focused on. And so, yeah, we're proving out that it can be a profitable business.
When do you think you get there?
Not clear.
But there's a path.
Yes.
There's a path to profitability.
Yes.
So Tesla is launching its robotaxi service next month. We heard from Elon Musk on CNBC this week. What do you make of their approach, which is no LiDAR, no remote assistance, no mapped routes, versus what Waymo's doing, which is LiDAR, mapped routes, city by city?
I think it's been really important for us to prove out the safest path to doing this. You know, asking people to trust us, asking people to put their children, their families in a Waymo vehicle without a human behind the wheel is a brand new product category. It's a brand new experience. So for us, there's no reason to eliminate aspects that make it safe. And so that's what we've been laser focused on, is what is the safest path to doing this? Now, we're the only company that starting October of 2020 removed the driver. And so there's probably a lot of ways it can be done, but we're the only ones that have done it. And we've been doing it 24 hours a day for almost 5 years. And so to us, it's really important to focus on safety, not to focus on safety and then cost, not cost and then safety.
So does that mean that you think Tesla's focusing on cost and then safety? It's taking a back seat perhaps? What makes you believe that maybe their strategy with no LiDARs is less safe today?
I think that it's less of a focus on them and more of a focus on what we've learned, which is that you have to be able to see at night. You have to be able to have this vision that's better than humans, right? Like what we're doing is we're replacing humans. We're not asking you to sit behind the wheel and take over the vehicle at a really vulnerable moment.
Right.
Instead, we're inviting you to sit in the back seat, relax and unwind, and get safely to your destination. That's a very different value proposition, but it's one that requires belts and suspenders, and that's the approach that we've taken.
Right, and I mean, I've been covering the industry for a long time. I saw what happened with Uber when it ran into its issues, saw what happened with Cruise. Are you worried that as Tesla rolls out and maybe they're putting cost ahead of safety, are you worried that there could be an accident that sets the whole industry, the autonomous industry, back?
I think in the early days of a nascent technology, like having a healthy worry about how you know, it takes a long time to earn trust, and it doesn't take that long to lose it.
Absolutely.
And so, of course, with everyone, we want all competitors to enter this space focused on safety. Like, that's the only reason it's worth it. Can your technology make the road safer for humans? Yes or no? And so, of course, we have a healthy worry about that, no matter who the company is. But that's because there can always be an overreaction by regulators. Like, their job is to protect the public. This is part of why we have the safety hub. We think it's our job to make clear that our technology is unique to Waymo. You know, it's developed, designed, assembled here in the US, and it's proprietary to us, and no one else has it, and we put our safety stats out there.
Right.
And so transparency mixed with safety, mixed with years and years of experience, ultimately should be enough, but yeah, it makes us worried.
People actually riding in the cars. We talked about this before, right? There's actually probably no better test. I know that living in San Francisco, someone gets in, they may be very nervous, but they're quickly sort of see it for themselves. It's interesting that Tesla's going to start with just 10 to 15 robotaxis, right? But Elon Musk, he just said that he anticipates having 1,000 or thousands of autonomous Teslas on the roads by year end. Is it possible that they're going to have more on the road than Waymos? There's going to be more Tesla robotaxis than Waymos by the end of this year?
I think it's, of course, possible. I think it's sort of an interesting question around business model. Like, I think if you thought about ride hailing before we launched, there are so many more ride hailing vehicles on the road than Waymos. But Waymo's doing one thing. It's carrying riders autonomously. So it's not how many cars do you have, it's how well are they utilized with paying riders, and how safe are you making the roads. And so for us, after 50 million miles, being able to look at the data and say that, okay, we've been able to have a reduction of over 80% of airbag crashes and injury causing crashes, like, that's what we care about. And so, yeah, maybe there's more, like, you know, running around in cities, but that's not what we think is most important.
Does that drive urgency on your end then? It sounds like you sort of are on your own path. Does what Tesla does or launches, or how many cars they have on the road, affect what you do? Does it create more urgency for you to look to a different business model that includes a Zeekr fleet, that includes Toyotas? How many cars do you anticipate will be on the road doing Waymo commercial rides by the end of this year?
I think for us, the urgency is the state of our roads. You know, over 1.3 million people being killed globally on the roads. It should be urgent for all of us to use technology to address that. Like, we're not satisfied with the status quo. What every company, there's a lot of companies sort of focused on this. That's not what creates urgency for us.
Right.
The opportunity for the Waymo driver to be deployed and for roads to be made safer is what creates that urgency. And now that we have all these, we have tens of thousands of riders taking rides every day. The other urgency for us that's created is they have family members that live in other states that we're not offering the service in. And those states and those countries are asking Waymo, like, when are you coming?
Right.
Like, we're interested in you coming. And so there's a excitement that's happening. There's a realization that this is real. And then there's actually places asking us to come sooner. All of that creates urgency for us.
So Elon Musk, he says that Waymo's approach doesn't scale because it relies, we talked about this, on expensive hardware, city by city sort of mapping and basis. When can we expect to see, I know you guys are planning a new fleet, lower cost with Zeekr. When could we expect that?
Our Zeekr vehicles are testing now. And then we've already announced that we have a partnership with Hyundai to do the Ioniq 5, so that'll follow. And then we just announced the partnership with Toyota. You know, for us, it's really important to think about, we're building a generalizable driver, and we've had that driver across multiple vehicle platforms. And so you're going to see us continue to do that. Right. You know, the reason that's so exciting to us is, you know, we're starting with ride hailing, but once you have a generalizable driver, you can do, you know, we have a redundant platform with Daimler trucks. We've done local delivery, you know, partnerships and pilots. And then we are in conversations with Toyota about personally owned cars. And so we really think about this as how to make sure that ride hailing is advancing the Waymo driver so that it becomes generalizable across a host of business models.
I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the Toyota partnership because it did introduce this idea that I think a lot of investors thought Waymo had the edge on, but personal ownership, which is something that Waymo, you talk about the Waymo driver, has had in its sights already for many years. How's that going? And how do you think about that? Do you think that ultimately does the model look more like Uber, a ride-sharing platform, or more like a personal ownership, what Tesla and Elon Musk believe will happen?
I think that What I've learned is automotive companies are very interested in, at some point, having access to the Waymo driver. And so we're interested in making sure that it's available. And the Toyota partnership represented sort of preliminary discussions to explore that. And think about it as like marrying their like manufacturing and scale prowess with our technological prowess.
So in the future, whenever that is,
Yeah.
do people have their own
Car.
self-driving cars
Yes.
in their driveways?
Yes, people can purchase a vehicle directly from an automotive company, or you could imagine a future where automotive companies actually decide that they're going to manage fleets of vehicles. So that's a little bit of a business model question for them, but certainly we want to make the technology available for them.
Right. So you're laying the groundwork for cities beyond the Sun Belt, which makes me so happy because we were talking about how people on the East Coast in New York, they don't understand sort of the place that Waymo now plays in cities like San Francisco and LA. So you've got DC. What is the biggest obstacle for you? Is it technology? Is it regulation? Is it consumer trust?
I think trust is something we'll always think of as what we have to work hard at. You have to work hard to earn it, and you can lose it fast. And the other thing that we're really focused on right now in Los Angeles, in Phoenix, and San Francisco is freeways, right? Like there are many, many cities that will benefit from us having the ability to drive on freeways. And again, it's very different to put someone on a freeway behind the wheel and ask them to take over than inviting someone to sit in the back seat and enjoy the ride.
Right.
And so we are laser focused on making sure that our freeway experience delivers the experience, both safety and comfort, that riders have come to expect.
What do you think the biggest misconception is for people, who haven't been in a Waymo or a robotaxi?
I think one of the misconceptions, because we live in a world where people think in terms of whether they're driving or someone else is driving them, they're constantly thinking as a drivered vehicle. It's hard for people who haven't had a Waymo One experience to imagine sitting in the back seat or the passenger seat with an empty driver's seat.
Right.
And imagine that is real and scaled. And that's the reason I think this 10 million rides is so exciting, because I think that'll start to make an impact in people's minds. Like, wait a minute, this isn't science fiction and it's not the future, it's happening now. And it's not only happening in San Francisco, where technology can sort of be perceived as quite advanced. It's also happening in Austin through the Uber partnership. It's happening in Los Angeles. It's happening in Phoenix. And soon it'll be in Atlanta, and then Miami, and then, as you said, Washington, D.C., and then more cities to come.
Abroad, Tokyo even. I know you're testing there.
Yeah.
But regulation has been sort of part of it, right? Of limiting a little bit on scale. Musk, he's calling for national regulations on self-driving technology. Would that be positive for the development of the industry at large?
Yeah, I think we are certainly focused on a national AV standard. We think that will help. Some of what you have to do at the state level relates to sort of regulating the driver. And so we think that's fine. But when you're focused on safety, we think that should be at the federal level. And President Trump and Secretary Duffy have both been very supportive of that. I think there's a recognition right now, given how dynamic this space is, that like now's the time to sort of make U.S. innovation a global leader in the autonomous vehicle space. And so I think creating this national standard, creating business certainty around this would be great.
Are you optimistic that gets done this year?
This term.
This term.
I'm optimistic that it gets done this term. And I say that because, the President Trump in the first administration was very focused on this too. And so this is a continuation, and I feel like now's the time.
And do you think part of that helping that narrative is what's been happening in China? We've seen a lot of advances. How do you view the Chinese robotaxi autonomous market compared to what we have here in the U.S.?
I think it's dynamic, it's growing, it's important, we should focus on it, and it has full government support. And so I think we should be in the exact same position. And I think from a consumer experience, consumers will decide, right? Like they'll look at the safety records, they'll understand who's delivering on the value proposition. But I really do think at the end of the day, it's becoming a much more global and dynamic space.
Is China caught up? Are they ahead?
It's hard to tell.
Very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about your partnership with Uber, partnering in
Austin
and Atlanta, excuse me.
Yeah.
Why not partner with Uber in more cities? Like Miami, you decided to go with Move for fleet management, but Uber can do that as well. Why are you guys kind of spreading out your bets with different partnerships?
Yeah, so we think of it as like, because we've been the first to remove the human driver, we've really needed to build an AV ecosystem. And so in Miami, we're going to have a fleet operating partner, but in Austin and Atlanta with Uber, we're really looking at them. They're a network operating partner. On day one, they have the demand.
Right.
And so that's really compelling for us. It gives us the chance for more people to have access to this technology. Fleet operating partners give us the chance to scale Waymo One directly to riders and for them to really get to know us directly. And so all of these business models are important for us to test out in the early days. It'll be fun to sort of have this conversation in 4 years on how it all kind of evolves. But right now, it's important for us to not go it alone. EV charging, vehicle integration, OEM partners, community partners, like we think of the ecosystem, and Uber is an important part of that.
How are you seeing then the trade-offs versus going alone with Waymo One in places like San Francisco and LA, where obviously you're going to get better margin? Maybe not better margin though. How are those finances working out? And what do you think will be the way forward? Do you see more partnerships or more Waymo One apps?
I think you'll see us continue to have fleet operating partners. We think that's important. It's also like, let everyone do what they're really good at. One of the biggest values of Uber is you have day one demand.
Right.
Obviously, we showed up in San Francisco and we had to build that. That's really valuable and important for us to know how to do, and we've demonstrated we can do it. And so now we can do it everywhere that we need to do it. And this is why we have these options.
Right. When you think about a city like New York, in San Francisco, you can understand, right? People are sort of early adopters. They're willing to take Waymo. But when you think about a New York, would you go in with a partner or a possibility that you do it on your own?
Undecided which way we'll go, but certainly New York is an incredibly important market from a regulatory perspective, from a consumer perspective. And so for us, it's like doing it in the way that ensures that the greatest number of people are able to access Waymo One. That's what we'll focus on.
Let's talk about Waymo within Alphabet, because I talk about this often, how, and so do analysts on Wall Street. If Waymo was broken out as a separate company, might be valued way more. You look at what Tesla's valued at and what Waymo's valued at, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Feels underappreciated. Do you think there's a point, when is that maybe Waymo revenue at least will be broken out in the bigger Alphabet scheme?
I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on how they might decide to handle that. Obviously, you said it's a part of Alphabet, so those are Alphabet decisions. I do appreciate, though, the point that you're making, which is that as we've been able to build the Waymo driver and scale and demonstrate that this is a scalable technology that consumers will incorporate into their everyday lives, the value of what we've built is starting to become more clear.
Do you think if you were spun off from Alphabet, it would be easier to operate, easier to raise money, easier to scale?
I think it's been incredibly important to have the financial support of Alphabet. We've seen many, many companies not be able to make it to this point. I mean, this is a now 16-year journey, and not need to focus on cutting corners, right? Like that has been such a critical part. So I'm not in a hurry to fundraise without them. And at the same time, we are building something valuable to them and valuable to Waymo. And so I think we're all equally excited about the future. But
fair enough. Sort of lastly, I just want to talk a little bit again about the strategy between Tesla and Waymo. Tesla's seen as being AI first, but that's not entirely accurate, because I know that Waymo's technology is also very much incorporating artificial intelligence, but you guys get kind of hit for relying on LiDARs. If AI camera mode proved to be just as safe, would you guys take that route? What are you seeing as that evolves?
So I think it's really important to think about, we started in 2009.
Yeah.
And so from 2009 to 2020, the reason we were able to remove the driver is because of the technology approach that we took. There's no other company that did it in that time frame. I think it's sort of tempting to imagine a world where we could have done it without LiDAR. It's just not our actual lived experience.
Right.
And so for us, it's important now we have a driver that's learned with that data. And so what we do in the future is a result of what we did in the past. It's not that we would be doing something different altogether. So right now we're not changing, but if we did change, it wouldn't necessarily mean that we could have skipped that step. It's a really important step.
Do you see a world in which you don't need LiDAR?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tekedra, for sitting down with us. Huge milestone. Thank you for bringing it to us, and excited to see the progress, the next 10 million trips.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.